So when you think about exercise for older folks, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably something like gentle walks, right? Maybe a little water aerobics? The classic advice has always been to just, take it easy. But what if that advice, as good as it sounds, is actually missing something huge, something absolutely critical for aging well?
Well, let's just cut right to the chase with a big question. Should seniors avoid heavy lifting? Now, I bet for most of you, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is, yeah, of course, that sounds way too risky. But what we're learning from the science is telling a completely different story, a much more powerful one.
Believe it or not, the answer is a big, resounding no. In fact, not only should older adults not avoid lifting heavy things, but working it into their lives, the smart way of course, might be one of the single most important things they can do for their strength, their independence, and especially their bone health.
To really get why this is so important, we got to throw out this old idea that our bones are just, dead scaffolding holding us up. They're not. They are alive, and they are constantly changing and adapting to what we do. It's kind of like your bones have their own internal thermostat.
This whole idea has a pretty cool name, the mechanostat, and it's a fantastic way to think about it. It works just like the thermostat on your wall. When you place a demand, a load on your bones, the mechanostat senses it and adjusts your bone strength accordingly. So you give your bones a tough job to do, and they respond by literally building themselves up stronger to handle it next time.
Okay, so check this out. This is where it gets really fascinating. A researcher named Harold Frost broke this whole response down into 4 zones. If you're just kicking back, not doing much, you're in the disuse zone, and your bones actually get weaker. The adapted zone is where most of us live our daily lives. It's enough to keep things as they are, but not to improve them. But if you really want to build stronger bones, you have to push into the overload zone. That's the magic spot. That's where your bones get the signal, hey, time to get stronger.
All right, so we get it. We need to hit that overload zone to build stronger bones and muscles. But, and this is a big but, just getting strong in the gym isn't the whole story, not even close. The real win is when that strength shows up in your everyday life, making everything from carrying groceries to playing with grandkids easier and safer.
Researchers have actually mapped this out. They call it the disablement process, and it's kind of like a domino effect. It can start with something small, an impairment you might not even notice, like a little bit of muscle weakness. But then that leads to a functional limitation. Suddenly, lifting that bag of dog food feels a lot harder than it used to. And if that continues, it can lead to a disability, where simple daily tasks become a major struggle, and that's a direct threat to your independence.
And this brings us to a really interesting problem that one study called a bottleneck. What they found is that people can go to the gym, get stronger on the machines, but then that strength doesn't automatically make it easier to get out of a deep couch. There's a disconnect. The bridge between gym strength and real life strength is often missing.
So how do you break through that bottleneck? Well, the answer is something called functional exercise. It means you stop just training muscles in isolation and you start training the actual movements you use every single day, the things we call activities of daily living.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in practice? How do you start lifting heavy things the smart way, in a way that's actually safe and builds that real-world strength we've been talking about? Well, it all boils down to 4 super important, non-negotiable rules. First, you start light. We're not talking about huge barbells here. A couple of kilograms or even just some resistance bands are perfect. Second, form is everything. You've got to keep that back straight and your core tight. Third, all your movements should be smooth and controlled. No weird jerky motions. And fourth, and this is especially key when you're starting out, get some help from a pro, like a physical therapist or a good trainer.
All right, let's talk about the king of functional exercises, the deadlift. Now hold on. Before you picture some giant powerlifter, let's redefine what that means. A deadlift is simply the movement pattern of picking something up off the ground. And the beautiful thing is you can adapt it to any fitness level. You can use light dumbbells, wrap a resistance band under your feet, use a chair for balance. You can even just practice the top half of the movement. There is a version of this for absolutely everyone.
And here's where the magic happens. This slide just lays it out so perfectly. The deadlift you practice in a workout, the formal one, it strengthens the exact same muscles you use for all the everyday deadlifts in your life. Every single rep becomes practice for picking up that heavy bag of groceries or that laundry basket or your grandchild safely and without even thinking about it.
Okay, as we start to wrap this up, I want to talk about what winning actually looks like here. Because honestly, the big reveal from all the major studies on bone density is probably not what you're expecting. It's actually way more powerful.
So a huge deep dive analysis looked at a ton of studies and found that this kind of training led to a, wait for it, 0.64% increase in hip bone density. And I know what you're thinking. That's it? After all that work, that sounds tiny.
But here's the twist. That tiny number is actually a huge, massive win. So why on earth is a gain that small such a big deal? Why is it actually the most important number we've talked about today?
Because it's not about what you're gaining, it's about what you're not losing. Look, the data shows a typical older adult who isn't doing resistance training can lose between 1 and 3% of their bone density every single year. So that little 0.64% gain isn't just a tiny step forward. It's completely stopping and even reversing a 1 to 3% slide backward. You're not just gaining a little, you're preventing a huge loss. That is a total game changer.
And this isn't just numbers on a chart. This is about real people. Take a guy like John, 68 years old, who started a simple program with resistance bands after he'd had a hip replacement. And within just a few months, it wasn't about the numbers for him. It was about feeling confident enough to walk around without his cane. It was about being able to do his own chores around the house. That's the real win.
So, from now on, when you see a bag of groceries, or a laundry basket, or even a bag of cat litter, don't just see it as a chore. See it as an opportunity, a chance to send that signal to your bones and muscles to stay strong, stay ready, and stay in the game. The question really isn't if you should pick up heavy things. The real question is, what heavy thing will you pick up today?